What are queues? Queues are a generic data structure that are often built using the backing of a linked list. And if you don't understand what a linked list is, check out my recent video in the corner where I explain it in full depth. Queues utilize the first in, first out methodology. Don't get this confused with stacks though, because you will see later they are very similar with only one real difference. Queues, like its name suggests, function very similarly to the queues or lines that people wait in the real world, hence where it gets its name from. Queues have three main methods: add, remove, and peek. Sometimes it'll be taught as enqueue, dequeue, and peek, but they're essentially the same things. The add or enqueue method puts the elements starting at the back of the queue. Let's add 5, -12, and 7. The peek method simply returns whatever is at the front of the list. In this case, the peek method would return 5. Next, let's use the remove, or otherwise known as the dequeue method. This removes the element at the front of the list, which in this case is 5, and returns it. Now if we would use the peek method, it would return -12, because that is now the front of our queue. And like I said, they're very self-explanatory based on the name. Now that we understand the premise, let's take a look at what it looks like behind the scenes. Like stacks, queues are also made using linked lists. Except queues are often made using both a head and a tail pointer. You will see why in a minute. Let's take the same example as before. We add 5 first. Since 5 is the only element, both the head and the tail will point to it, since it is both the first and the last element of this particular list. Then we add -12, all we do is we point 5 to -12 and point the tail now to -12 since it is the end of our list. Now adding 7, we can directly access the end of our list using the tail. Right now this will take us directly to -12. We update -12 to point to 7, and we finally update the tail to point to 7 also. And now we see why we have a tail pointer. It allows us to immediately go to the end of our list without having to go through every element in the list first. Now if we want to use the peek method on our queue, we see the linked list in the background just returns the head of the list, because that is what is at the front of the queue. If we wanted to remove or dequeue, it removes 5 and then returns it. Then it sets the head to point to -12. This is why we say dequeues are first in, first out. Since 5 was the first value to be entered, it is also the first value to be removed. And that's all you need to know to understand the basics of queues. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.